have just landed at Charles de Gaulle Airport, Philippine Airlines welcomes you to Paris, France. On behalf of our flight crew, we thank you for choosing Philippine Airlines, your airline of choice. To proceed with the arrival process, please proceed to the immigration counter, then go through the security checkpoint, and finally, you may find your way to the airport gate where a service bus and tour guide will be waiting. Thank you and enjoy your stay.
Good day, passengers. Again, we welcome you to Paris, France. While on our way to our destination, let me give you a brief description about France. As you can see, the French flag has the colors blue, white, and red. It is in vertical stripes and has an equal width. Every country has a flag and has a meaning connected to their countries. Since the House of Bourbon was the ruler in the 60th century, the color white represents their king. The red and blue colors represents Paris, since the revolutionaries were red and blue when they stormed Basel in 1789.
Let's move on to the culture in France. French culture is often associated with Paris being the center of fashion, cuisine, arts, and architecture. Let me start by discussing the religion in France as part of French culture. In France, Catholicism is the predominant religion. Although Catholicism is the predominant religion in France, France maintains a tradition of secularism. Catholicism played an important role in shaping French culture and was the state religion until 1789. Lastly, there are other religions that can be seen in France, such as Islam, Buddhism, and Judaism. Next, let us talk about French values. The French believe in égalité, meaning equality, and it is part of the country's motto, Liberté, Égalité, Fraternité. Additionally, the French also embody the values of romance and passion, and there is an open attitude towards sex outside of marriage. Lastly, family is highly valued in French culture. Mealtimes are frequently shared with the family, and weekend gatherings and meals with extended family are common. Let's move on to the cuisines they have in France. In France, one day consists of three main meals: breakfast, lunch, and dinner. French cuisine is mainly characterized through its cheeses, wines, breads, and sauce. Family gatherings or ceremonial meals are often said to have wine to complement the courses, champagne to mark ceremonial occasions, and it is drunk after the meal. Elaborate meals are served on Christmas Eve by Catholic families, and these are the meals that are usually involved: salmon, oysters, turkey, and la bouche de Noël cake. Next, let us talk about arts in France. Arts are deeply appreciated in French culture, and there are three types of arts that are commonly used. The first is literature. Oral traditions and folk tales were predominant during pre-modern France. Up to the mid-20th century, rural communities held veillées in which people gathered in someone's home to trade stories and tales that they have. French written literature is regarded as one of the greatest world traditions. The second is graphic arts. Painting, sculpture, and architecture are the most major graphic art genres in France. Third is performance arts. In France, theater arts and dance has a strong tradition both in the classical sense and in the realm of folk life. The grand traditions of theater are dominated by Paris, as they are in most of France's cultural life.
Moving on, did you know that 45% of English vocabulary came from French? Yes, you heard it right. Okay, to know more about it, let me share some facts with you. Back in history, French and English have been interchanging some words for some time, but in the 20th century, France has been strictly implementing the use of French due to some laws like the Toubon Law. France has been resisting other languages to enter. French language is used in all places like workplaces, restaurants, advertisements. In general, all should be in French. Due to Toubon Law, all is required to use French in French society. The law impelled to use alternatives to Anglicisms. In a professional setting, there are new words that cannot be replaced by French. That is why they started to accept Anglicisms. But what exactly is Anglicisms? According to the New Oxford American Dictionary, Anglicism is a word or a phrase borrowed from English into a foreign language. Here are some examples of Anglicisms that have the same meaning in English: marketing, smartphone, global, digital, leader, email, and brainstorming. But There are also some French language purists, so these words have alternatives in French. The word marketing in French, it is mercatique. Smartphone, but in French, it is téléphone intelligent. Global, but in French, mondial. Digital, but in French, it is numérique. Leader, but in French, it is dirigeant. Email, but in French, it is courrier électronique. And lastly, the word brainstorming, but in French, it is remue-ménage. Lastly, these words are to look out for because you might mistook them for their meanings. Here are some examples of anglicisms that is used in French but have different meaning in English. First, footing, but in French it means jogging. Second, break. In French, it means break in a relationship. Next, brushing. In French, it means brushing hair while blow drying. Next is basket. In French, it is used as basketball or sticker. Next is sleep, which means underwear. And lastly, the word relooking, which means makeover in French. Interesting, right? I hope you've learned something new and be able to apply it during your trip.
Pista na Babylon.
What?
Oh, I didn't mean to pisten a violin. I meant to waste your efforts. I can understand your confusion, but you see, it was an expression, and a French one at that. Expressions are words or phrases that mean differently from what they say. Sometimes they're based on culture, other times on logic, but there are times where expressions are not based on any understandable matter. For example, the phrase to piss in a violin means to waste your efforts. You could question why pissing in a violin means to waste your efforts. Why not pissing in a guitar or any other musical instrument for that matter? Still, pissa no Babylon means to waste your efforts. There are a lot of French expressions. Here are the top 5 that are the most famous and which you would most probably encounter during your stay here in France. Number 1. C'est simple comme bonjour translates to it's as easy as hello, but it actually means easy peasy. This is one example of an expression that has logic behind it. Saying hello is one of the most easiest tasks there are, unless you're saying it to your crush. That is why the phrase is used to mean easy peasy because saying hello is easy peasy. Number 2. On ne pas sortir de l'auberge translates to you've not left the hostel, but it also means we are not out of the woods. This is an example of expression that has culture behind it. You see, in France, they use the word hostel, which initially means a public house or an inn, as a substitute for the word jail. The phrase, we've not left the hostel yet, is synonymous with the expression we are not out of the woods, which means that the person is not yet out of a difficult situation, such as being jailed. Number 2. On ne pas sortir de l'auberge translates to you've not left the hostel, but it also means we are not out of the woods. This is an example of expression that has culture behind it. You see, in France, they use the word hostel, which initially means a public house or an inn, as a substitute for the word jail. The phrase, we've not left the hostel yet, is synonymous with the expression we are not out of the woods, which means that the person is not yet out of a difficult situation, such as being jailed. Number 4. Être dans la galère translates to be in a galley, but it actually means to get yourself into mess. 15th century France used to imprison criminals into galleys, which are boats powered by rowing, in which the criminals serve as their engines. Today, they use the phrase, to be in a galley to say, to get yourself into mess. Number 5. Mettre le point sur i translates to put the dots in the I. It means to make things clear. We can also decode this expression by the phrase itself. To put the dots in the I means to write down the letter I. By only imagining the letter I in the air, people may not understand it. So if you write it down, then people will be able to see it and then understand. If you want to learn more about French expressions, scan the QR code above or look it up on Google.
Moving on, we also wanted you to know the meaning of their gestures. First is faire la bise, or exchange of kisses in English. This is how French people say goodbye or greet their friends and families. La bise meaning air kiss, where the lips do not touch the skin, or a cheek-to-cheek kiss. Second is se serrer la main, or shake hands, is common among many countries. However, the French way of doing this is a bit unique and more interesting because it is done in single downward motion, firm and brief. Third is un, deux, trois. A lot of people count using their fingers, but the little finger is where they start. In France, they use the thumb as the starting point. For example, un, deux, trois, quatre, cinq. That's how they count. And in English, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Fourth is faire l'amour. It is a gesture wherein they pout their lips and make an angry face to express their disappointment or an anger towards a person. Fifth is jardinesse. It is an expression wherein they use their index finger to touch their nose or the tip of their nose. It means that you are a smart or you're bragging about your nose, that you have a good nose.
Now, since you're familiar on some cultural terms of the French, gestures, and their English language, let's move on in doing business with the French. To proceed, let me introduce some essential meeting protocols here in France. First, it is important to remember that a handshake is one of the most common form of greeting in a business meeting. In line with this, the highest ranking individual should take the initiative to do it. However, if you're dealing with a woman, she should take the initial move to do the handshake. Your handshake should be measured and not forceful, as this will give a sign of being impolite. When a superior or a visitor enters a room, you should stand up or make a gesture as if you're about to stand up. This will show a sign of being respectful. Now, when you're doing a business meeting with the French, the usage of their first name might be unpleasant and insulting. Use only their first name when invited to do so. When addressing someone for the first time, use their family name preceded by the French honorifics such as Monsieur for gentlemen and Madame for ladies. When entering business establishment, it is customary to say bonjour. Similarly, while departing, courtesy necessities as au revoir, which is likewise observed from entering and exiting elevators. Generally, always remember to prioritize formality and excellent manners while working with French peers. These characteristics are highly valued, particularly in business relationships. Now, I will discuss different preparations for business meetings. Business meetings are usually scheduled at least 2 weeks in advance, as French highly values punctuality. Scheduling a meeting during summer vacations might be hard, as French usually enjoys their leisure time. Small presents are tolerable, but not on the first meeting, and definitely not with a business card, as this creates an impression of a bribe or asking someone for a favor. For potential business partners, it is expected to have a couple of meetings before reaching to an agreement. Usually, a long meeting is an indicator to a closer agreement or decisions. Moving on, as we know, European countries like France are very much more detailed when it comes to their attire, whether it's casual or formal. First impressions are very important for French, as this will create a huge impact on the outcome of their business relationships. First impressions usually rely on their appearance. Formal business attire is common in France, as you can see from people walking in the streets with their formal business attire, which is why I prepared some tips for you about choosing an attire in preparation for business meetings. First, keep it formal. Second, don't overdo it. Third, avoid bright colors or patterns. Fourth, don't dress in sensual manner. Fifth, when in doubt, opt for formal. And lastly, choose tailored clothing.
Thank you for that, Manuel. Now, if I may add up to that, let me tell you how to handle a French business meeting. First off, It is important to note that in France, business organizations are highly organized and well structured, and the administration of a meeting should be taken seriously. Hence, thorough planning and preparation is required. This includes ensuring that all objectives and strategies are defined and an agenda is established. Moreover, during the meeting proper, it is expected that all guests will participate in the discourse. So be aware of the topic flow and be ready to present your ideas. Furthermore, as you develop a conversation with your colleagues, try to keep your voice down and your demeanor more formal. More to that, business meetings should stay business focused, and any off-topic discussions that may invade on personal privacy may be deemed offensive. Salary, age, children, and family are common topics to avoid until asked to do so by your peers. However, language, food, wine, politics, and French history are valued topics that indicate your appreciation for the French culture. Also, you may want to keep in mind that criticizing Napoleon is forbidden in France. French people embrace Napoleon because for them, he is the reason why France advances in terms of economy, education, and government. Now, if you're into humor, be careful when cracking jokes, for they may be easily misinterpreted by the French. Instead, opt for cracking intellectual jokes, irony, and jokes about real-life events. Next, once the meeting is done, be prepared to create the minutes of the meeting within 24 hours and keep track of the decisions and tasks that are to be deployed after the meeting. Lastly, if further consultations should be made, a follow-up phone call would be highly appreciated by the French.
Now that you already know the basic information about France, we hope that you have learned something today and may you enjoy the rest of your trip. Au revoir!